Welcome, y'all. I had to reshoot this intro to my gumbo video because after looking at it, my wife said that it looked a little ridiculous with me in my NASCAR hoodie because it was the Daytona 500. And when I look back at it, I had to agree. It's hard enough to get people to take me seriously to begin with. I don't need my apparel working against me. So before we get into it, I just want to explain, the initial approach was for me to have a beginner and an advanced, and then whenever I got into it, I started working toward the advanced because I really only know how to make the gumbo in one way. So what I decided to do is I'll have a longer version. I don't know exactly how long it'll be, but it'll probably be 20 minutes, maybe more, of the longer process. And then I'll try and make a shorter version that is, about 5 or 6 minutes in length with voiceovers instead of my narration as I was doing it. And that abbreviated version may be something that you are more interested in following along with. Or if you go through the entire process, the first time, then the second time, having a quicker reminder may help you. So in terms of ingredients, you're going to need, if you're making one pot that's gonna serve, 6, 8, maybe 10 people, you're gonna need a large yellow onion. You're gonna need a bunch of green onions, not chives, green onions, because you want those white tops and you want the thicker stems. A rib of celery. You're gonna need a couple of the boxes of chicken stock if you're buying it from the store. Water's fine if you don't have access to chicken stock, or you don't have any in the pantry right now, but you have everything else, you feel free to go ahead. You're going to need rice, obviously. You're gonna need the sausage and smoked pork sausage, and then you're gonna need your chicken. You want probably the equivalent of a chicken to a chicken and a half, 2 or 3 breasts, 2 or 3 quarters, and that should be enough to get you through and get you started. So once you assemble all of those ingredients, I'll, over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll break down on what you do with them. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, so here are my vegetables, and these are the only vegetables I use. I think probably one of the more controversial takes that I have on my gumbo is that I do not use bell pepper, which I know is sort of a cardinal sin when it comes to the Cajun trinity of celery and onions and bell peppers. But I grew up without a bell pepper in my gumbo. And so that's how I cook it. If you want to throw bell pepper in, go right ahead, but I will not be putting it in mine. These are the only vegetables that you're going to need. I'm going to set aside the celery and the green onions for now, and I will show you how I dice an onion. Now, it's not going to be pretty. This is not a cooking class, so just please be aware. The way that I dice an onion is you have 2 ends. You have sort of the root end here. I cut the opposite end off and then straight down the middle like this. And then I'm going to do each half the same way. Pull off the outer layers that you're not going to want. Now again, I'm not fast. This is not, I'm not a chef, so I can speed it up and look really fast. But that would be a lie. And then I just cut angles in it. And again, it's not slices in it at an angle as you go around the sides, like so. And then I just slice down, let the knife do the work. Okay. And there you go. It doesn't have to be super fine. It doesn't have to be super sharp and even, because it's just going to cook for hours. So I'm going to continue doing the onions like that, and I'll see you in a sec. All right, the onions are done. 3 onions. If you're doing just one pot, you'll probably just need 1 large yellow onion. And now for the celery. I don't like big pieces of celery in my gumbo, so what I want to do is cut them lengthways so that they are not as
thick. So the wider pieces from the base, you'll probably want to cut into 3 pieces, like so. And then the narrower pieces, let me find one here. As from the top, you can just, split down the middle. Okay. All I do here, and keep them all roughly the same length, and just dice them like so. Okay. Don't keep your fingers sticking out like I am. All right, and that's about the size that I like. Okay, so I'm going to continue cutting these, and then we'll talk about the green onions next. Okay, now the green onions. I don't know how typical this is. This is the way that my dad always did it, and it's the way that I learned how to do it. He always separated the whites from the darker green parts. So the celery has all been cut, diced. So there's my onions, celery. Again, if you're doing just one pot, you probably only need 2 or 3 ribs of celery. I will cut these and then drop the white parts, the tops, into my celery mix, and then dice up the dark green, and into the fridge they will go. All right, so there's my green onion tops. Bottoms are just going to get diced, and I'll be right back. Okay, so all of my veggies are done. My green onion tops here, again, into the fridge until I'm ready for them, and green onion white parts, I guess tops, even though they grow upside, well, they don't grow upside down, so maybe these should be called tops, the white parts. And then my 3 onions. Again, if you're just doing one pot, you probably only need half of this. 1 bunch of green onions, a couple ribs of celery, and a yellow onion. And the next thing that we're going to take a look at is the proteins, the meats that we're going to need for this. Okay, let's talk seasoning for a second. Most of what I use in terms of seasoning you see laid out right here. My coarse kosher salt. This is my fresh ground black pepper. It's just a pepper mill that is a beast and a joy to use. Red pepper, cayenne pepper. This, you can't see the label, but it is called Slap Ya Mama, and it comes from Louisiana. You can get this on Amazon. I've also seen it at Barbecues Galore here in the GTA, for those of you who are in the area. You may also see Tony Chachere's. This is the extra spice version, but there's a regular version that we used growing up. I prefer Slap Ya Mama, and most people are cooking now with Slap Ya Mama instead of Tony's, but Tony's is really good. Tony's they carry at Bass Pro Shops. So if you're in the GTA, you have a couple of options where you may be able to track one of these 2 down. Honestly, you can't really go wrong with either one. The more spice, I like heat, but there's a regular version that's a little milder than this. And then the last thing is hot sauce. You may be asking, well, where's the Tabasco sauce? Well, I don't use Tabasco hot sauce, really. Louisiana hot sauce is different from Tabasco. This is a brand you can get here in the GTA in Canada. They have this bottle at Metro Superstore, grocery store, for example. I prefer Crystal hot sauce, but that is difficult to get. I bring bottles up with me every time I come back from Louisiana, but they never seem to last very long. But if you want something that is more authentic in terms of what Louisiana cooks use, this is the hot sauce to get. I would say that these items go a really, really long way in Cajun cooking. So we're going to start seasoning the meat now. So I'll go ahead and get out my chicken. All right, so I'm leaving the chicken in the containers for now. I'll walk through how to season them. But when you're getting chicken, get whatever you feel comfortable with, or whatever's on sale. I grabbed these chicken breasts on the bone. I like those because I like cooking them whole. and leaving the bone on and taking it out at the end to shred them. And it was on sale. We go through a lot of food in this house with a lot of mouths, and we always get what's on special. Whatever chicken's on special, it's just going to go into the gumbo. They also had at Metro yesterday these chicken backs for less than $2. And there's a ton of flavor in these because there's so much marrow and bones in there. So if you ever have sort of like these cuts that are cheap but have a lot of flavor for a gumbo or a chicken noodle soup or anything like that, these are incredible. Chicken quarters were value pack on sale, so I grabbed those, and then just chicken breasts because these really go far at the end. But we're not dicing any of this stuff right now. There's no cutting involved. At this point, we are just going to season. So I will walk you through my approach to seasoning in just a second. Okay, so I've got the chicken on the bone in one pan, and then I've got my boneless breasts in another pan because those are going to go in later. I'm going to use these to sear. So it's the first step before I put my onions in. So I've got a couple tablespoons of salt, and I'm going to season pretty liberally. You have to keep in mind that you're going to, this is going to be a broth sort of consistency, I guess, and a little bit of flavor is going to get swallowed up by the volume you're going to be producing. So you can be a little bit more generous with the salt. Be mindful that if you have a chicken stock that has a fair amount of salt in it, that you want to season accordingly. Now, if you are not comfortable with seasoning, you don't have to season it hard now. You can season later. So I'm going to do both sides with the same amount, but you'll be able to see at least on this side how much I'm using. Okay, now the cayenne pepper I go super light on because I've got little ones in the house that eat. So I don't ever want to put too much for them. So please judge your own tastes accordingly, because when it comes to this stuff, a little bit goes a really long way. Okay, so I've got that, and now I'm going to use my Slap Your Mama, and that one I will do pretty liberally because it is milder than the hot sauce. It also has, milder than the cayenne. It also has salt in it, so you're getting more salt. So just be mindful. The seasoning just takes a lot of practice and for what you are going to like. But that is what it looks like whenever I season it. I'm going to flip them over and do the other side with about the same amount. So just flip and repeat. Okay, now this is probably the most important item for the gumbo. For me, it's what really makes the flavor. I had mentioned it in the other video that my dad and I and friends and family had been making smoked pork sausage for 30 years or more, and getting store-bought sausage is always really, really difficult because you want a smoked pork sausage. I want as few seasonings and herbs as possible. So I get these from Florence Meats here in the GTA. They're out in Oakville, and I know some people are like, well, Oakville's not really the GTA. Well, whatever. Split that hair if you like. The point is, this is the best sausage that I have found. They have an andouille, which is supposed to be a typical Louisiana-style sausage, but actually the flavor profile, the spice profile, is not really andouille. The sage, the rosemary, some of the other things that they put in there don't really belong. This has fewer flavors. This is called the Shrimska, and it is really, really close to what we cooked. It is a fabulous sausage to work with. It's great for grilling. I go and I buy, usually a couple dozen links at a time, and then freezer wrap them because I use them in my jambalaya. I use it in my red beans and rice, use it in my gumbo. I love actually slicing it up into thin strips and pan frying it, and on fresh white bread with mayonnaise. It is absolutely divine. It is such a treat. This sausage is really, really good. Your mileage is obviously going to vary if you're grabbing, a smoked sausage from a major brand smoked sausage from the grocery store. So you're gonna have to sort of pick and choose. You don't want too many exotic flavors. Like it needs to be smoked, and you want it to have a little bit of flavor. But things like Italian sausages, things like garlic sausage, maple sausage, jalapeno, cheddar, those sorts of sausages are probably not going to work. You want something really, really simple. Okay, and you can see there, it's a pretty wide diameter, and there's no way that I'm going to give this to the kids. But you can see sort of the fat to meat ratio, and you can see the spices.
All right, so here I cut them in half moon shapes because, as I mentioned previously, they were so wide in diameter that with three little kids here, I'm not going to have sausage that is that big in diameter. And this is the chicken about to go into the pot, the backside. And then here I'm just putting my canola oil into the pot before the chicken goes in for searing. So get the cooking surface nice and hot, and then add the chicken.
Okay, so I got my heat up pretty good. Put the chicken skin side down into the cooking oil, and I wanted to get a little audio in here so you can hear the sizzle. We're gonna brown it on both sides. Check and see how it's doing. So you can see that it's starting to stick a little bit here on the bottom. That's fine. That's where a lot of the flavor is. The skin is starting to change color. I have two pots going. I have another pot back here that you can't really see with chicken in it, doing the same thing. So we're going to let these cook and sear. One of the things that you want to get comfortable with is heat. Okay? So you want to get a nice sear on the chicken, and you want there to be some, what my dad called gratin. I don't even know what that's Cajun French for, but this stuff here on the bottom, the fond, you want to make sure that you have some of that. Now, you don't want to burn it, but these thick bottom pots give you a bit of wiggle room. And you're not cooking the chicken through. That's going to happen whenever it's actually in here. So you just want to get this on the bottom, right? It's not burning, but that's where a lot of the flavor and the seasoning is. So the more that you can get it seared, the better it is. Now I'm going to switch to the back pot over here because that chicken is ready to be flipped, and then we'll flip this one in a moment. All right, so we're going to flip these over. Sticking a little bit there. Not a problem. But you can see how the skin is starting to turn. All right. So we're going to get a sear on each side. So this has probably been on medium heat. I've got a lot of BTUs on this front burner, so each cooktop is going to be different. But it's been on medium heat for probably about 7 or 8 minutes to get this color. So give it another few minutes on this side, and then we're going to take the next step. Okay, I'm going to turn the vent on because it's starting to smoke, but you can see, I'll talk over just pardon this, but you can still hear it cooking, and you can see sort of the color on the bottom of the pan. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sear my sausage in that because I want some of that sausage fat to cook in this. Okay, that will sear the sausage, and the fat from the sausage will give it a will give it a smoky flavor, and it'll give the onions more to deglaze. Okay, so we cut the heat down a little bit. We're just going to give the sausage a couple of, well, probably 5 or 6 minutes. In this, okay, you can see here that sort of orange colored, yellow colored fat. Okay, that's the seasoning mixing with the fat of the chicken as the the sausage as the fat renders. Okay, so we're just gonna let that cook for a couple of minutes. Some crunchy chicken skin, I'll save that for myself, and back in a minute. Okay, so we are ready now for the onions to go in. You can see now a lot of this oil and fat now has released a lot of the that gratin, the fond at the bottom. All those little pieces are now up, and that's all flavor. So we are going to put the sausage back in the pan where I had it, and then we'll drop the onions in. Okay, so the sausage is here, and you feel free to, try 1 or 2 pieces or a dozen, just to make sure it's good. And I can confirm it's good. All right, you can see it's bubbling. I'm still actually on low heat. Now, I'm putting about 1 to 1.5 onions worth in this pot. And I'm gonna let that cook. Right, I want it to deglaze. That seasoning, that flavoring, that spice, that fat, that oil, that's here in the bottom. So, we're gonna let that cook. We're not putting the celery in yet. I don't have an explanation why. It may not be technically the right thing that you're supposed to do, but that's the way that I learned it. To deepen the onion flavor, and the slightly less cooked celery, we'll put at the end. Has a little bit, well. All right, so the onions are sort of translucent, a little bit soft, but you can see they've changed color. They really picked up that fat and the spices from the sausage. So the celery and the green onions are ready to go in. And again, I'm only putting half because I need the other half, for my pot in the back. Okay, so we're gonna let these saute and get pretty clear. That'll probably take about 8 minutes or so, and then we're going to be able to add our stock and our roux. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. You can tell this is starting to stick a little bit. I'm not going to add any more oil or fat or anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deglaze with a little bit of the chicken stock. Now, I have homemade chicken stock down in the freezer, but I'm saving it. For what? Well, it was going to be for the advanced gumbo, but this is turning out to be a little bit more of a hybrid. And I already got it at the store. So this is less salt, no salt. Just gives you a little bit more ability to control how much salt and seasoning there is. So going to put 1 entire canister in and let it continue to cook. And at this point you want to get your roux out, which again we made it yesterday, and it smells like, it just smells incredible, just divine. So we're obviously not going to need all of this. We'll talk about ratios when this is gotten up to temperature and we're ready to add the roux. All right, so sort of the moment of truth, I guess. Now, up to this point, you could have just sauteed the onions and your vegetables and added a little bit to deglaze it, and that would have been the the simple method. Now we add the roux. There are different ratios that you're going to find online. I don't ever measure it out. I just know that if I'm doing this much, I'm probably going to want about 4 to 6 tablespoons worth. It'll come out dry and chalky. That's fine. It's going to melt. Now you can start out with less and add more as it cooks if you want the gumbo to be stronger. So err on the side of less for now. All right, that should be good for now. And from this point on, it's really just about managing. It's hot. Yeah, again, I do dumb things in the kitchen. It's the flat side of my knife, don't worry. Not that you were worried. And this sausage is absolutely divine. I'm gonna ruin my lunch. All right. So it's really, you can start to smell that it's really cooking. So at this point, you want to add your water, you want to add your stock, add your liquid, and then you'll bring it to a boil. Okay, I have added the roux. You can see here that the stock has definitely changed color. We're going to bring this to a boil. And before I do that, I'm going to drop my chicken backs in, because again, you want those pieces with the bones that have a lot of flavor, you want those to get as much cooking time as possible. If you want to put the other pieces of chicken in now that you did earlier, you can. I'm going to wait because since they've cooked a little bit, they'll start to fall apart pretty quickly. And I'm not ready for that yet. The sausage will go in because you want the flavor from the sausage. I'm probably going to need a third pot, actually. So all my sausage is in the 2 pots. One last piece. It was obviously meant for me. And so this is what we have here. This is the gumbo. All it's missing now is the chicken and thyme, T-I-M-E. I don't put the herb in my gumbo. So bring this to a boil. Let it simmer for the more time you can let it simmer, the better. The Daytona 500 is on, so I've got all the time in the world to let this simmer for probably 3 hours. And at some point, the next steps are to put the chicken in whole, let it cook, and then I take it out because I don't want any bones in it for the kids. So I take the chicken out about an hour before it's done, and before it starts to really fall apart. And I pick the meat off the bones, and I also shred the chicken. It just makes for a much nicer bowl of gumbo at the end. But that's all it is. So this will come to a boil, and we sit, and this is good timing because the race starts in half an hour. So in about a half an hour, I'll be back, and this should be boiling and ready for a simmer. Okay, now I know that y'all can't smell this, but it smells absolutely absolutely incredible. It's starting to smell like a gumbo. It's been right at half an hour. Perfect timing. Race is about to start. I'm going to drop the heat to low on both of my burners, and I'm going to go ahead and put the chicken back in from earlier and let it cook. This one's going to go in the back. The chicken breast I've already put in there. And then this is just going to sit like this for the next couple of hours. And then I probably won't film shredding all this chicken. It's just the only step that is left. But just watch your heat. Just every half hour or so, come and scrape the bottom of the pot. Make sure it's not sticking too much. And you want it to go for at least an hour. If you can do 2 or 3 hours, that's even better. And while that cooks, I'm just gonna watch the race, and the next time that we see this, it'll be pretty well done. All right, it's been a couple hours. Race is still going on. Brad Keselowski caused a major wreck on lap 38, so I'm annoyed because all that dude does is ruin NASCAR races, but he cannot ruin the Gumbo. Now, two things. The first thing is you'll notice that the fat starts to gather on the top of the Gumbo, right? So we can skim that off. I'm not going to do it now because it's tedious. It's also easy to do the next day because it will get to the top. I actually have a smaller bowl. For tonight. This smaller pot here. The two bigger pots are gonna end up going in the freezer. So I'm just going to skim that later. The other thing that I did was, as I had mentioned, I pulled out all of the chicken and shredded it. Again, a tedious process that I will. This video is going to be long enough. I wanted to spare you, but the Gumbo is done. All that will be left is to serve it over rice. At this point, with about 20 minutes left, just take out the green onions. Into each one. Each of my 3 pots that I have going. Save a few for garnish at the end. Now you get the rice on, and you'll be ready to serve as soon as the rice is done. So all that's left is for me to do that, and then get you an image of the finished product.